5 of the Best is an opinion-based series on films which I have seen released during the chosen year. This is to celebrate previous years in film, not to cause any offence. All opinions are my own. Hi everyone, welcome to 5 of the Best, a series in which we celebrate movies year by year. This series of videos will consist of me discussing my 5 favourite films of this chosen year. Today's video, we're talking about the year 2009, so let's get started. Before we get into our top 5, here are a few honourable mentions from this year. Avatar, Watchmen, The Road, The Taking of Pelham 123, District 9, and Sherlock Holmes. Now, let's get on to the list and start with number 5. Up is directed by Pete Docter and Bob Peterson, and his voice is provided by Edward Asner, Jordan Nagai, Christopher Plummer, and Bob Peterson. So before I start talking about Up, I thought I would talk about the studio behind it, Pixar. And in Pixar Studios you have such a fantastic movie production studio with such high quality, because when we talk about large studio productions, things like Warner Brothers, things like Paramount, that release so many films each year and have such a wide repertoire of films that they've released and such a variety of quality, if you like, because something like Paramount, for example, they have well, actually any movie studio nearly, they have the real instant classics, these real 9 or 10 out of 10 films that are just fantastic. But then they have also complete duds, these kind of 2 and 3 out of 10s, and there's such a wide variety of quality. But with Pixar, I think what's most unique, and it's probably the best batting average for a studio that there is, really, in Pixar, because the quality that Pixar puts out, and Pixar doesn't make 10 films a year, 20 films a year, they do maybe 1, maybe 2. There's not a whole lot, or maybe they're involved in maybe 3 or 4, but there is not a silly long list of Pixar films. There is a select number, and with Pixar, the quality that shines through is just evident. They have so many such quality things, and I remember probably for a lot of people, the one that really made us all take notice is Toy Story, and obviously now Toy Story as a series and as a franchise. But Toy Story at the very start in the mid-90s, it's what they were able to achieve with that, especially with production at the time. It is just wonderful. And to cut now to Up, and in Up, I think, to be honest, Up is probably, in my opinion, the greatest of Pixar's creations so far. Up is a lot to unpack, if in truth, because Up is a film that it has such quality in so many different areas. Yes, it ticks all the boxes of what you want in a family film for kids that would really enjoy it. There's laughs, there's cute characters, there's enjoyable moments, but what is underlying, and it's so beautifully told, is a real tale of coping with grief and how grief affects us and the emotional sadness that has, especially on us in later life. And in the characters in this film, you have such a wide contrast. You have, of course, the old man, you have the young boy, you have the dog, and you have the peacock thing. And that on the surface sounds like, okay, well, it's just a normal kids film that they just do, but there's so much more. I find myself so emotionally invested with this film. Certainly as it starts, it starts in a really engaging way and continues throughout the whole film. But there's a part, certainly in the middle of the film, that really addresses grief and how it changes our lives. And I thought, this is so profound for a kids film, and it's so tastefully done, if you get what I mean. It's done in a way that really doesn't hammer home, but it'll affect the right people it needs to affect. A 6-year-old watching this film won't be crying their eyes out, but someone who's 30 or 40 might really hit the right nerve and break them, actually, in some ways, but not in a way that is bad. it really tugs on the heartstrings, and I found Up to be so much more than just a kids film or a family film, whatever way you want to call it. Up is a beautiful film, and I don't use that term lightly. It really, I would be honest, I think Up is probably the highest quality of kids film that I have seen. If we call it kids film, family friendly film, it's hard to differentiate between the two terms, kids film, family friendly film, but Up is just beautiful. It's a film that I think there is enjoyment, there is emotional connection that everyone will receive, whether it's a young child, whether it's someone who's 60 or 70, or someone who's any age. I think it really has something for everyone. And that sounds like a cliche tagline that they would put on the poster of the film, but Up really is a special, special film. I admit I didn't see it straight away when it was released. I seen it actually only about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But when I did, I wish I had seen it in 2009, because Up is, as I say, special. It's a special film. It's a beautiful film. I would recommend it to anyone. It just, and in a way of saying, this sounds like nearly a critique, but it ticks all the right boxes, and it sounds a bit cliche, but to tick all the right boxes for a kids film, not only any kind of film, and it just goes back to that thing about what Pixar can deliver. Pixar delivers great in emotional storytelling, and that's something that kind of transcends all their films in some ways. Films that have maybe a quirky premise that is something that the kids will be engaged with, but there's always something more, and that's something I think Pixar achieves so well, and that's why I think this is the greatest thing they've produced so far. I think Up really, it's special, and I would definitely recommend you see it. Number 4. Zombieland is directed by Ruben Fleischer and stars Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone, and Abigail Breslin. Now, in what a lot of media outlets would probably have called America's answer to Shaun of the Dead, we have Zombieland, a film in which it really isn't that. Yes, it has the zombies, yes, it's a comedy, but that's where the comparisons end. And in a film that, I mean, you've already seen, if you've been following this series, you know my adoration for Shaun of the Dead. It's one of the great comedy films, never mind zomcoms, I think is the subgenre it's been categorised into. And for something like Zombieland, I seen the trailers, and remember the hype around this film. We were certainly in that era of every film being made was a zombie film, whether that be a true horror film, whether it be a suspenseful thriller that included zombies, or a comedy. Near enough every other film was a zombie film. It was really that era. And Zombieland really sticks out to me because it relies on something that is so simple, so basic when it comes to filmmaking, but it just does it so well, and that is pacing. The pacing of Zombieland is almost perfect, because from the start of the film to the end of the film, there isn't a lull, if you like. There isn't a part where you go, oh, that bit's a bit off. Don't get me wrong, it's not like it's constant action, it's not like it's constant madness, if you like. There's a lot of downtime, a lot of character building, especially for 4 characters played wonderfully in this by Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone, and Abigail Breslin, and they don't even have names. They're named after the states they come from in America, so there's not a whole lot of character development, but as we go and as we learn, it's the snippets of information that we learn about the characters, and that's actually more engaging than if we were told this character is from here and their family is this. You know, very monotone, very basic storytelling like that. This is a very quite unique way of getting us engaged with the characters, because we want to know more, because as we go we start to care more about these characters. The most character development, of course, is given to Jesse Eisenberg's character Columbus in the film, with him as the kind of forefront and the arrowhead of the film. But that's not to say these other characters aren't doing really well. And for them, obviously, it went on to massive careers now. All 4 of these are either Academy Award winners or Academy Award nominees, or at least have been up for real high quality awards. They've really built from this, and into the 2010s decade, they really started to dominate, especially people like Emma Stone. You know, we had her appearance in Superbad, and we've had her here, and a few other around this time. I think Easy A wasn't too far from this time, so it was a lot of comedies for her, and for her to progress into the kind of stalwart of actresses nowadays, and their performances and their wonderful Academy Award-winning La La Land and things like that. When you think back to this and Superbad and stuff, it really shows just the versatility of her as an actress. She's brilliant in this film. But I think the two standouts for me personally are the two characters that are just earliest. It's Jesse Eisenberg as Columbus and Woody Harrelson as Tallahassee. And for both of them, they're probably as big a contrast of characters there's ever been in nearly any film, because the way they bounce off each other, they're completely different. And it's something I always say when we talk about comedy films, and I continue to say, comedy films rely on the dynamic between the characters, and if they are elevating each other. And in these four characters, the way they bounce off each other, particularly Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Harrelson in this, really bounce off each other in a way that is just great. It's just brilliant. Throughout this film, you find yourself getting more and more attached, as you should with any film, but you find yourself really getting attached to these characters. You really want them to win, and that's something, because in a lot of films, you know, especially comedy films, there's a lot of comedy films, while you're having a laugh and while you're enjoying it, you're not always going, I really care about these characters. I found by kind of the third act of Zombieland, I'm fully in on all four of these characters. I really want them to succeed. I want them to live. I want them to survive this apocalypse. And there's also some great comedy moments. And I say some comedy moments like that. It's a great, I said pacing of the film. It's not often I say that with comedy films, but the pacing of Zombieland from the start, it has this unique, I think all comedies have this unique thing. And I think Zombieland has one of the most evident ones, which is this kind of checklist that appears throughout the film. That Columbus, Jesse Eisenberg's character, he's very planning, and he has these rules to survive the zombie apocalypse. And these kind of graphics that appear on the screen, and they are kind of part of the world, just as like an overlay. It brings a lot more charm to the film as well. And that's probably a word that I would overall. It's just a charming film, and you wouldn't usually say that for any kind of zombie film, whether it be a comedy or a horror, but I just find everything about Zombieland to be just what I wanted it to be. But I touched on it earlier, and I think this is probably the biggest part. In a time when zombie films, we're in a time where every other film is basically a zombie film, and it's getting to the point where everybody's going, another film, another zombie film. To have it succeed like this, and to have such a great film of quality like this, with great performances, great comedic acting, great comedic moments, it was a breath of fresh air, and it came out just at the right time. And I think it was either a make or break, really, because I think if Zombieland had been another zombie film and this one was awful, I don't know what would have happened in the coming few years and the following zombie films. Would they've continued, or would the studio just went, that's another one that's not really hit the mark that we wanted it to? Because as a subgenre, these zom-coms, they're pretty good. The two most evident ones, as we've mentioned, have both appeared on 5 of the Best: Shaun of the Dead previously, and now Zombieland. So it just shows that this is a subgenre that can be done well. And I think that Zombieland just hits all the right beats. It just does exactly what it should do. It has brilliant moments, brilliant dialogue, brilliant characters, and just overall is so much better than I thought it would be. I thought when going into it, I'd go, well, I'll not like it as much as Shaun of the Dead. And do I like it as much as Shaun of the Dead? I think Shaun of the Dead would just still edge it. I think Shaun of the Dead is still a lot more tight-knit in quality. It's certainly... But do you know what? Zombieland, the first Zombieland, I know obviously we had the sequel that we may get to. It may appear on the series when we get there. But the sequel certainly wasn't as good as the first one. But I think the first one was more of the novelty of Zombieland. It was a film that... It was so quirky, so enjoyable. And again, I use that word, charming. Yeah, Zombieland is great, and I would definitely recommend, if it's your kind of thing, you think you are hemming and hawing of maybe, I might see this, I might not, give Zombieland a go. especially for the characters and the performances. These actors, you know, have went on to so much great things. I'm sure they'll appear in a lot of films coming up in the series, but this is right up there for me in some of their performances, and especially for Woody Harrelson. I think Woody Harrelson overall is, you know, because Emma Stone has probably been in bigger things we'll probably talk about when we see them. Jesse Eisenberg certainly has a few big films coming up. You'll know they'll probably appear too. For Woody Harrelson, I think he really is is he the standout in this film? They're all great. They're all great. Zombieland is great. I'd recommend it to anybody. Give it a go if you're thinking about doing it. Number 3. Law-Abiding Citizen is directed by F. Gary Gray and stars Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx. Now, after the fun and enjoyable talk about Up and Zombieland there, and the enjoyable nature of both those films in quite different ways, Law-Abiding Citizen is also a film that has true quality, but is a lot more serious, a lot more dark, if you like. And it's a man in the situation of fighting against the justice system. And on the outset, you would go, well, okay, I'm kind of interested. But what really adds the weight to this film is, I suppose, the realness of it. And I think if you've seen the film, you go, well, there's a lot of stuff that's a bit out there. But in Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx's performances, the two leads of this film that bounce off each other, Gerard Butler as the kind of antithesis towards the government and the justice system, and Jamie Foxx as the representative of the justice system. There you go, we put the two words together. The government and justice system. There we go, if I can speak. But yeah, in this film, I find that Gerard Butler, in particular, now I have to admit, he's not my favourite actor in the world. I like him a lot. I think when I see him, he does a good job, but he's not someone that I would go is anywhere in my top 20 favourite actors or anything like that. But he's really good in this. Really good. In the way that Law-Abiding Citizen is a film that really is such quality, I suppose, in the kind of realness factor that you engage with him. And it's not a film that has a hero and a villain, if you like. In both ways, in a way that the both villains, and the representation of both sides, the good and the bad. And in Gerard Butler, you have someone that you're fully with him, even though he is doing these heinous acts and doing these real dark things, real dastardly things, real evil things, if you like. You're with him for a lot of this film. You're on his side because of the situation he's been in. And it's so smartly directed and so smartly written, this film, because it certainly keeps you as the audience. You're not in a situation where you go, that is definitely the good guy, that is the bad guy, I am siding with them, and I do not like that other person, like a lot of films do. They put it on a plate for you. I know who I'm rooting for, I know who I'm not rooting for. In this film, you will flip-flop every time. You will change your opinion. You will, in 2 scenes, you will be with Gerard Butler's character. Another 2 scenes, you'll be with Jamie Foxx's character. And in performances of them two in particular, of course, as the 2 leads of the film, the way they bounce off each other, the way they kind of... It's the cat and mouse game and the one-upmanship of this film that really brings the quality. The quality is just that. It's a cat and mouse game. It's Gerard Butler in a scenario of basically being one step ahead of Jamie Foxx the entirety of the film. Or that's how it's set out to be. It's a film that really has Jamie Foxx jumping through hoops, because in the scenario of what has happened, he is the one that, in Gerard Butler's mind, in his character Clyde's mind, that he has to... He's the forefront of the problem with the justice system in his scenario for what happened to his family, and you're fully behind Gerard Butler in this film for a large part of it. It's when it gets to kind of the latter half, you're going, okay, you're going a bit far here, man. You've went too far down the other side, and then you're on Jamie Foxx's side. But then you're going, well, actually, I still don't really side with Jamie Foxx. I'm not on the justice system side. I'm not on the victim side either. In Clyde, you change a lot. It's all about perspective, this film. And as I said it before, the cat and mouse game of Law-Abiding Citizen is really the thing that gets you in. It's the thing that gets you roped into this film. And after about 20 minutes, you're in. Because, yes, it's a hard hitter. There's some really harsh and hard-hitting subject matter throughout this film. But Law-Abiding Citizen really does have some top-quality acting scenes. And again, I mention them because they are really the two standouts. There's a few other characters throughout the film, but there may as well be just two actors in this film. Jared Butler and Jamie Foxx. And in Jamie Foxx, also, because I've talked a lot about Jared Butler's performance, but Jamie Foxx as the kind of justice system, you wouldn't really... If you were picking an actor for that role, I don't know if Jamie Foxx would have been the first choice, but he really knocks it out of the park. He really does so well. And again, but that is the hook for this film. The hook is, where do I stand on this? Where do I stand on the morality of who should I side with? Because your brain will tell you to go with the justice system. But then, for what the justice system has put the character through, Jared Butler's character through in this film, certainly early in the film, then you realise, where do I even stand? You start questioning yourself when you're watching it. And I think that's what a great film is. It's when it really connects to you to that level. And that's why I found Law-Abiding Citizen to be really top quality. It really deserves all the plaudit it gets. You've heard a lot of people, I'm sure, talk about this film, and rightly so. Law-Abiding Citizen is really great. It's a film that I would recommend. It's hard-hitting. Don't be going in if you're expecting a sunshine and rainbows film and a pleasant ride. It's a hard-hitting one. It's not a pleasant watch, if that's the way if you get what I mean. It's a pleasant watch, certainly on the enjoyable side of things, because it's engaging, it's hard hitting, it really has you hooked from the start, and the pacing is really good, but also doesn't have this. It's not like it's pacing that relies on action and guns. It's more about smartly placed dialogue, well crafted storytelling throughout the film. Especially, I think really the real meat and veg of this film is the middle. The middle part, when we've established where we're going, we've established the narratives of the two sides, and once that really gets going, that's when this film really takes hold of you. It is... Law-Abiding Citizen is so great. Give it a watch if you haven't. You probably have already seen it. It's one of those films that a lot of people have seen. It's top quality. Law-Abiding Citizen. If I can even speak, I'm just so excited about it. I just love Law-Abiding Citizen. I said it that time. Said it right the second time. Didn't say it right the first time. I can't speak. I just can't speak. I just love it. Anyway, Law-Abiding Citizen is awesome. I think I just fumbled it again there. Law-Abiding Citizen is really good. There we go. I think I'm ready to do my times tables now. Anyway, watch Law-Abiding Citizen if you haven't. Number 2. The Hangover is directed by Todd Phillips and stars Bradley Cooper, Zach Galifianakis, Justin Bartha, and Ed Helms. Now, before I talk about the Hangover first film here and the best of the three, I do want to talk about something I've talked about so many times. I don't really want to linger on too long, because if you've been following the series, you've heard me talk about this before, and that's saturation by sequels. And I feel that for Hangover, it's one of those ones that people do, they think of it as a trilogy instead of the first film now. And as a trilogy, it's not 10 out of 10, if you like. The second and third film are fine. They're okay. They capture some of the stuff that was presented so well in this first film. But it's hard not to say that they do dip in quality as they go. But let's forget about that. Because Hangover, the first Hangover film, really is, and it's not often I'd use this word, actually I don't know if I would use this word for any other comedy film, it's iconic. The Hangover is a film that everybody talked about. It was the topic of discussion for everybody for a long time. It is one of the funniest and smartest comedies, I would say, ever. It's definitely in my top 10 comedies. I'm sure for a lot of you guys it's exactly the same. Could be top 5. It is just so brilliant. I talked earlier when we talked about Zombieland with the pacing of a comedy film. And sometimes pacing, if it's funny enough, the pacing doesn't really matter. But The Hangover from start to finish is iconic, it is brilliant, and it relies, again, I'm going to say what I said about Zombieland and so many others, the dynamic between the characters. And in this scenario, you have 3 all-time greats. And people would say, oh, well Zach Galifianakis, if I can speak, I can't even say his bloody name. Why couldn't he just been called like Zack Smith or something? In Zach Galifianakis, you have someone, him as Alan is one of those, he's the most memorable character, of course he is. His situations with Mike Tyson, his situations throughout the film, even with the baby, it's, I mean, even me saying those things, you know exactly what I mean. They're very vague statements, but you know what I mean. He is great, but I think it's understated how good both Bradley Cooper and Ed Helms are in this film. Because Ed Helms, as Stu in this film, he's Andy Bernard from The Office. He is. It's exactly the same character. He plays the same person. But that's not a bad thing, because he's so great. He's so great in this. But I think the other one that it doesn't get talked about as much as it probably should is Bradley Cooper. Now, this is obviously before Bradley Cooper became this first-rate actor that was in all these top movies. It was way before things like American Sniper or A Star Is Born. You know, this is way before this. But Bradley Cooper has a lot of comedic acting chops. He really does, because the way he is, the dynamic between the 3 characters is just so good. It's so good because they're also different characters. It reminds me a bit when we talked about Superbad a few years back, and we talked about the dynamic between the 3 central characters in that, and how their differences amplified the qualities of the others. That's exactly it in Hangover. But let's talk about Zach Galifianakis, of course, because him as Alan is he is the one. If you're talking about the one true standout, the one that people always remember, the one that brings the most laughs, brings the best comedic parts of the film, it's him. It's him in this. The Hangover is just such a fun time, and that sounds like a really basic thing to say, but it is. We can break it down and talk about the intricacies of what the film is and blah blah blah, but The Hangover is just one of the most enjoyable comedies. It's just so fun. It never takes itself too serious. Actually, it's the opposite. It goes along the line of silliness. It goes down the line of, okay, people go away to Vegas and they get drunk and that's it. We can't find the groom. That's it for the wedding. That's it. You know, if you're on a very primal level, it's that. But it's usually other films. You know, if you were talking about a film like a Vegas film, you would think everything about the film would center on that night. You know, and that's the film. The film would be what they get up to on that night, and then obviously wake up at the end of the film and that's the hangover. That's what you would maybe think, but actually you don't see any of the night until the very end, where you see some photos. It's all about the repercussions from the night, and I think that was such a great choice, because that makes the film so much better, because you're learning as you learn with the characters. They are in a scenario where they don't remember the whole night, and you learn with them what they got up to. You hear snippets from different characters that appear, and it's just so well done. The Hangover, you've seen The Hangover. I was about to say go and see The Hangover. I know you've seen it, and if you haven't, I don't know how, because The Hangover is one of those comedies that literally everybody has seen. It's so good. We talk about the sequels. The second and third aren't the worst films by any means, but I think if you're talking about the real quality one, it's definitely the first. The first Hangover is lightning in a bottle. It is so good. It is definitely top 10 comedies for me, and I'm sure it is for you as well. The Hangover is so good. However, it's not my number one, because my number one for this year is number 1. Inglourious Bastards is written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, stars Brad Pitt, Christoph Waltz, Michael Fassbender, Daniel Bruhl, and Melanie Laurent. So we've rated number 1, and you probably guessed it was this. With the way this 5 of the best was going, you probably guessed it was going to be number 1, especially since it didn't even appear in an honourable mention. You're probably thinking, it's got to be Inglourious Bastards, hasn't it? and it absolutely is. Inglourious Basterds is... Where do I even start with this film? Inglourious Basterds is so good. Like, the quality in this film is oozing out of it from everything. The performances, the story, the narrative, the tension, the dynamic, the pacing, the story being told overall. Everything about this film is top tier. But let's start with the main man, Mr. Quentin Tarantino. And I know he can be a bit of an acquired taste. If you're not the big fan of the blood and guts and whatever, maybe not your favourite director in the world. But for me personally, Quentin Tarantino is one of the all-time greats. His quality films speak for themselves, and Inglourious Basterds is right up there. And this film, let's talk about something that I really didn't expect going into this film. Because when you talk about Tarantino, it's not a word, or it's not a descriptive word that I would use to describe a lot of his films. It doesn't really apply. But in something that happens in Inglourious Basterds, and it starts from the very first scene, and it's going to lead me into talking about the performance of the film. But the first scene, where the Nazi officer comes in, he's hunting the Jews. Obviously the subject matter was very dark, and very real in a lot of scenarios. But the word is tension. For a lot of this film, for large portions and certain scenes, and especially this first scene, the tension that builds, you're on the edge of your seat, and I hate using that term because it's so like movie theater cliche, but it is. Like, you're gripping your seat, you're losing your mind, trying not to even breathe, a bit like the characters in the scenario. But the performance, and let's get on to it. The performance of the film, and one of the great performances, is Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Basterds. You know that if you've seen the film. He is unbelievable in this film. He's unbelievably good. He is... The change in mannerisms is so subtle, so brilliantly done by him throughout this. It's one of my favourite performances ever. Just it's such minute details. Threatening people by a smile. Not threatening people by force or guns, but his mere presence in this film really is, it's something special. It really is one of the more standout performances in recent memory. He is so good. But also, let's talk about a few other performances. Let's talk about Brad Pitt, because Brad Pitt is he a bit typecast? Is he quite similar in a lot of his roles? That argument could maybe be made, yes. He is quite deadpan in a lot of his delivery, with a lot of characters that he's played over the years, whether that be Fight Club or whether that be recently in something like Bullet Train. His quality shines through, and in Brad Pitt you have exactly the character he has to be, the kind of brooding American, if you like, and he's so good in that role. But another performance, before I go off talking about performances, well, actually, let's give a mention to Michael Fassbender, who is also, I mean, his quality, his list of films that he's been in now, and the quality he has, bar the odd stinker, something like Assassin's Creed maybe comes to mind. Michael Fassbender really is one of those best of his generation. Certainly the argument could be made, because he has so many great kind of stoic performances in this. And the scene in particular in the bar in the middle of the film, I'll not give him any more description than that, because if you've seen the film you know what I'm talking about. Him in that is one of my favourite scenes from him ever. He is also brilliant in this film. But the other, slightly maybe underrated performance, and one that really, I mean, not a lot of people would wax lyrical about like we do about Christoph Waltz, and rightly so, is Melanie Laurent, which is a French actress who is, she is wonderful. Like, she is the real dark horse for quality of this film. She is, I just think her role is so smartly written, and she performs it so well. And that just, I mean, that, for me personally, I think she's wonderful, but that can apply to nearly everybody in this. They're all doing such a good job. And something that you've heard me talk about before when we talk about Kill Bill or any kind of Tarantino film is dialogue. That he is the master of written dialogue, and that's always something that I hone in on. That's something that I always find so much quality in. And in Inglourious Basterds, there was absolutely no doubt that there was going to be that, and it is there in abundance. Whether it's a tension scene and the dialogue is absolutely fantastic, or even in the more comedic scenes, because there is scenes where this film doesn't take itself too seriously. It has those Tarantino-isms, if you like, if that's even a word, that they just the quality of this film. I can't understate it. Inglourious Basterds has one of the most memorable feelings coming out of the cinema. I think that's probably the best way, and I've rewatched it so many times now. I feel like I have to talk again about Christoph Waltz. I feel like I didn't talk about it enough. That performance of his is just mind-blowing. He is so good. But then, if I talk too much about him, does that understate the rest of the performance in the film? I don't want to do that either. Everything about this film is just top quality. It is not only one of my favourite Tarantino films, it's one of my favourite films there is. The quality just, I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it about 5 times now. The quality just shines through of this. Inglourious Basterds is arguably one of Tarantino's best. Of course, he has so many to compete with, but I'm sure a lot of people would put this right up there when they talk about the films and the real high attention to detail. You know, there's not a part where this becomes any kind of a parody of this awful time in human history, this kind of Nazi Jew dynamic. It's not that. It's done in a way that keeps the realness, keeps the harrowing, I don't know, subject matter, if you like. I suppose that's probably the most primal way of saying it. It really has something. It has that special quality, and that again sounds very vague, but Inglourious Basterds, it has such a feeling. It is a feeling as a film that really hits everything you want it to. And I went into this film expecting a good bit, but only expecting it because of Tarantino, and I know what he can do and what he has done, and I hope that all his films reach the same level as some of his classics like Pulp Fiction or any of these other films. But I just adore Inglourious Basterds. It is real, it is hard-hitting, it is tough to watch in some parts. The tension, as I mentioned, is like, you'll be sweating watching this film in some scenes, but also it's just, I love it. I love it. Inglourious Basterds is a film that I would recommend to everyone. Maybe not if you're like 7-year-old or whatever, but I would say if you're old enough and you have an interest in Tarantino's work, you enjoy the history side of things. Obviously a lot of this is exaggerated in some points, but it's not to the point where, as I said, it's not like a parody of these events. It's quite tastefully done, if that's even the right word. Inglourious Basterds is top quality. It is as top quality as Tarantino gets. It's right up there on my list of Tarantino films. It's right up there on my list of films, full stop. Inglourious Basterds is so good. Go and watch it. If you haven't, if you have, go and watch it again because you know you love it, and I'm going to go do that now after I finish making this video because I love it. It's so good. I'm going to start crying. I just love it so much. Inglourious Basterds so good. Go watch it. Do yourself a favour. Do me a favour. I'm going to do myself a favour and go watch it. That's why it's number 1. You knew that anyway. It deserves to be there. It's the best film of 2009. And yeah, that's been 2009, a great year. A great year of film. Not a whole lot of honourable mentions, not a lot of films that really were pushing that top 5. But let's address the one that if you've stuck around, you're probably thinking, I thought that would have been on there. I thought that would have been at least in the top 5, and that's Avatar. Avatar for me is good. Avatar's great for what it did at the time. You know, for 3D filmmaking, for the... I mean, it did a lot. It did a lot good. It's a great film in that regard, but I always found that the story was kind of lacking in Avatar. and it's not a film. I rewatched it there recently, and I don't love it. It's just fine. I think it leaves you wanting a lot more in regards to narrative. And I always say which ones were close to breaking into the top 5. I don't know if any of the honourable mentions were. The Road maybe was probably the closest of the honourable mentions to break it into the top 5. But the top 5 for me was, as soon as I looked at the films in 2009, I thought, yeah, I know my top 5. Did I know the order? I knew Inglourious Basterds were going to be number 1. I knew as soon as I seen it, that's number 1. Wouldn't have mattered what other films were out that year or this year. There was always a good shout that was going to be number 1. The other ones, the other of the 4, I chopped and changed a few times, but that was what I came with, the top 5. But a real quality year. Not a lot of great films in regards to honourable mentions off the top 5, but the 5 that are there, I think, are just brilliant. The quality in those 5 films, they're all very different. We had 2 comedies, we had a real serious thriller / drama based film, and we had a kids film, family friendly film. I still haven't decided what term I'm going to use for that. Say family friendly film. So we had, in my opinion, the best family friendly film. Actually, you know what, that's awkward to say now. I'm just having to debate myself on the summary of this video. Ignore me, I'm waffling. Yeah, I'm not going to go over what I said, a lot of this stuff, but this was one of my favourite years of the decade, definitely, because of the 5, because we had such a variety. It wasn't all very serious films of quality, it wasn't all silly films, and comedies, and kids films, or whatever. It was all great quality, a variety. But in Inglourious Basterds, it was, yeah, you've just heard me wax lyrical about the film there, and I could probably talk for another 5 hours about how much I love Inglourious Basterds. But yeah, 2009's been a great year, and we've made it. We are about to start our next decade on 5 of the best. Do you know, when I started doing this series, I really thought, am I going to stick with it? Not because I didn't want to, I just thought, you know, doing a month, and these take a good bit of time. You might think they're pretty easy to hash out or whatever. They do take time, because as much as I do like doing them in a chatting format and chatting now, you know, I just turn the mic on and we have a chat, but these take time, and I really want to be able to look back for myself in like 10 or 20 years and go, what did I think of the movies of that year? And this is a good kind of time capsule for me too. I think that, yeah, we're almost entering 2010, and I think I mentioned it in the summary of one of the other 5 of the best, was when we get into 2010, that's when my love and adoration for film really began. Because in these films, in these years, a lot of these films I went and watched in the 2010s and kind of caught up because I wasn't really interested, or wasn't really at an age where I wanted to love these films, or whatever the case may be. So I think as we enter 2010 and all the way up to present day, you know, by the time we're going month by month, so I would hope we'd probably be caught up by middle of would it be 2024? Jesus, this is this is going to be going for a long time, guys. This series is going to continue. If you want to guarantee yourself to watch this every month, it's first of the month. Well, I try to do first of the month. Around the first day or 2 days of each month, a 5 of the best is going to be out. For now until they're foreseeable. For now until forever. Amen. I just enjoy doing the series. I love talking about these films. I love looking back and rewatching a lot of these for the list, and I really hope you enjoy them too. It's just such a enjoyable time to look back on great years in film. Obviously not every year is the top tier quality, but I think every year we've done so far, we've at least had, say, 2, 3, maybe 4 real quality films each year. And then the rest can maybe be more up for debate, maybe more on personal preference for me. But yeah. So if you want to stick around, I, as always, would absolutely love you for it. I appreciate you guys so much. I know these videos are long and just chatting about movies, but fire them on in the background. If you're working away or you're doing something and you want to listen, that's the best way for them. Treat it like a podcast, sure. Why not? If you want to stick around, I'd love you so much for it. Please subscribe. The channel is growing from strength to strength at an unbelievable rate, and I couldn't be happier, to be honest. It's so good. I'm a happy boy. If you want to stick around, please subscribe, leave a like, let me know you enjoyed this one. We're moving into 2010, as I say, so that'll be the next 5 of the best, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Before you go, here are some of my other videos. For updates and information on upcoming videos, the best place to find us is my Twitter. Much love, everyone.